Hello everyone. So after the success of Casino Royale, Ian Fleming was surely going to make another Bond novel, which he did, and it's Live and Let Die in 1954. So a lot of people have said it's not as good as his first outing. Well, today what we're going to do in this review is we're going to see how good it stacks up against the classic Casino Royale. And before we start, all of the pictures, well most of the pictures throughout this video come from the fabulous Dynamite Comics edition of Live and Let Die. So if you don't have it, be sure to go out and buy it right now. And obvious spoiler alerts, so if you haven't read Live and Let Die, go read it and then come back and watch my video. And listen, for real, like, subscribe, share, give me a comment, all right? Okay, let's do it. So from the start, there's quite a bit of difference from Casino Royale. The first being Bond isn't in Europe, he's in the States, New York to be exact, and later on Florida. Our story starts with Bond meeting up with his American contacts in New York. And as he is getting out of a car, he spots Mr. Big, who is being drove around by a black woman. Something Bond can't believe he has seen, saying that this is the only place in the world that a black woman would be driving a car. So quite the change in times we have seen. Anyway, we get a flashback to London where M tells Bond that some gold doubloons have been showing up across the United States in the hands of African American workers. And it is said that the man responsible for the plundering of this gold is Bonaparte Ignace Gualia, or Mr. Big for short. It's explained during World War II, Mr. Big was an OSS agent, the precursor to the CIA, and defected to Moscow and was chosen to return to America and use the capitalist system against itself. So, the treasure is actually the treasure of Bloody Morgan, who was a pirate, and is being plundered by Mr. Big in order to pay for his Soviet activities in the United States. So Mr. Big is a Soviet agent, a gangster, leading the United States' largest black criminal gang, and also the leader of the Black Widow Voodoo cult, which is the way he keeps his people in check by using the power of superstition. It's also speculated that Mr. Big is a zombie of Baron Samedi, meaning that Mr. Big's body is like a vessel that Baron Samedi has possessed. Another flashback over, we see Bond and his FBI friends in New York meet 007 CIA contact, who is none other than Felix Leiter. Bond and Felix are from the start a lot more chummy than what they were in Casino Royale. And I think it's because this book being much more light in nature. They eat a huge dinner and Bond goes back to his room and reads a book on voodoo, which apparently kind of freaks him out. And with all the dark supernatural things discussed, and then Bond gets a knock on the door and receives a parcel. So he's sitting there not having opened the parcel and begins to hear ticking, and the parcel explodes, having been a non-lethal bomb with a message inside saying how Bond only has a certain amount of ticks left in his life. Bond and Leiter decide that they should take a tour of Harlem and set out at night, eating fried chicken and drinking at bars, asking around for Mr. Big until they wind up in Mr. Big's club, the Scrapyard. During a striptease, the lights are turned out on Bond and Leiter, and they're taken to Mr. Big's men. Bond is taken to Mr. Big and introduced to Solitaire, who has second sight and can tell when someone is lying or not. But Bond can tell that she is not completely on the side of Mr. Big. As she reads Bond, she lies and says that what Bond has stated is true and Bond's life is spared, but he does not get away unscathed as his little finger is broken. On the way out, Bond throws T.H. Johnson down the stairs and breaks his neck, escaping after coldly blasting a few guys in the car that pulls up, which is probably one of the most brutal scenes in any Ian Fleming novel. Having been told by Mr. Big to leave the country, Bond and Leiter decide to leave New York and go to Tampa, Florida to check up on Mr. Big's dealings there. Before they leave, Bond gets a call by Solitaire who says she wants to leave with him and escape Mr. Big. Bond is really suspicious of her but knows that he can always damage Mr. Big's organization by taking her and decides to give her a shot. They meet and set off to Florida. Solitaire, however, turns out to be very much true to her word and isn't trying to double-cross Bond, wanting to get away from her life as a slave to Mr. Big. They are befriended by a porter on the train who tells Bond that some shady characters are aboard the train. They decide to escape the train during the middle of the night, but Some of Mr. Big's people in Florida have already seen Solitaire and calls Mr. Big's man in Florida, who is called the Robber, who runs Ouroboros Shipping, and asks if Mr. Big was due to come down because he had just seen Solitaire. And the Robber puts one and one together and determines that all is not well. So when in Florida, they meet Felix at the motel and decide to go out, leaving Solitaire there alone to check out Ouroboros Shipping, where they meet the Robber, a grizzly white guy who is rude and pretty cruel right off the bat, shooting some birds. Pretty much tells Bond and Felix where to go and to get off his property. When Bond and Felix get back to their hotel room, they find that Solitaire has been kidnapped. Bond and Felix have a few drinks and go to sleep, only for Bond to wake up and read a note left by Felix saying that he is going to have a look for Solitaire as he can't sleep. Bond gets a call shortly after that saying that he needs to come to the hospital, which he does, only to find that there is no one by the name of Lauder at that hospital. Bond goes back to their room and finds Felix having been bitten by a shark, losing part of his arm and leg, with a note that says he disagreed with something that ate him. So now Bond goes back to the robber's warehouse, and after getting spotted by the robber, gets the upper hand in the situation and ends up feeding the robber to the shark after all. So Bond also discovers at this warehouse that Mr. Big is smuggling gold in aquarium tanks, hiding deadly fish in it. So now Bond really wants to get Mr. Big. It's at this time it is decided that Bond should go ahead and go to Jamaica, where he meets eye-patched John Strangways and quarreled. It is discussed how Bond will swim across Shark Bay and place a limpet mine on Mr. Big's yacht, the Secretary, which will destroy what Mr. Big is using to smuggle the gold and Mr. Big himself. Quarrel gives Bond a training regimen and cuts him back on smoking, as 60 cigarettes a day can't be good for a swimmer. So Bond embarks on the swim across Shark Bay, taking some Benzedrine to keep him on his toes, or should I say, flippers. Plants the limpet mine on the Secretary, but getting bit by a barracuda in the process and being discovered by the guards. Bond is captured by Mr. Big then, and Mr. Big does not know of the limpet mine planted on the Secretary. Mr. Big and his lackeys tie Bond and Solitaire together and proceed to haul them. The whole time they are being drugged through the water, Bond is secretly knowing that the boat will explode soon and is praying that he and Solitaire will be far away enough from the explosion. Well, spoiler alert, they are, and Mr. Big somehow survives the explosion and comes swimming to Bond, only for him to get pulled apart by a shark and ate. Bond and Solitaire are then reunited with Strangways and quarrel, and M informs Bond that he gets a fortnight's passionate leave. So, with the end of Live and Let Die, is the book as good as Casino Royale? Personally, I would say so. I think Bond as a person is a lot better in Live and Let Die than in Casino Royale. He's a lot more easygoing and chummy, where the Casino Royale Bond reminds me a lot of Alec Leamas in The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. I like the friendship he has with Lauder, and it's totally fathomable when Bond kills the robber by feeding him to the shark. I mean, wouldn't you want to do the same if someone had messed up one of your buddies? The female part isn't really anything special. Solitaire is pretty much just a reward at the end of the book for Bond. Mr. Big is an awesome villain. I really like how he is pretty much like the Black Godfather or Black Napoleon of crime. He's controlling a lot of the crime in the United States, along with the voodoo cult, on top of being a Soviet sleeper agent. He's got his fingers in every pie, legal and illegal. But the Smersh connection is really the lowest part of the book for me. At the end of Casino Royale, we see Bond vowing to fight Smersh to take the Soviet counter-spy agency down, but the Smersh connection in this book feels very tacked on. I totally could see Mr. Big being a great Soviet agent, but they don't really go anywhere with this connection at all. I just wish they would have done more with it. After all being said, love Mr. Big and his henchman T.H. Johnson, the Whisperer, and the Robber to be exact. There's quite a few different villain henchman characters in the book, but those are probably the best of all of them. In a very different event to the movie version of T.H., the novel T.H. dies very early in the novel, whereas, of course, in the movie, T.H. survives, until the end of the movie. The Whisperer gets an expanded backstory, being a patient missing a lung, and for some reason they put him using a telephone as a messenger. Like, come on now, Mr. Big, couldn't you give him a job counting gold doubloons or something? The robber is such a terrible person that it actually feels good when he is begging Bond for his life only to be thrown to the sharks. As I have said, I think Bond and Felix have a much more friendly relationship, and one could see how two could have a close comradeship in the novels to come. Felix is left without an arm and a leg at the end of this novel, so that's something to look forward to. The novel is dated, and what I mean by that is, for example, the whole can't believe a black woman is driving a car. You know, it's even in 1953, I can't believe that that would be something that could be out of place, especially with how multicultural London, you know, how multicultural that city was. It's also very snobby towards Americans. I mean, he makes the remark about how eggs at a cafe would be made with milk. I mean, what an abomination. It is interesting that talking about the signs that Bond looks as he is riding through New York City, which says get off the road in case of an enemy attack, kind of takes one back to the whole post-World War II and early years of the Cold War, and how there was kind of uncertainty on what would actually happen in the world, you know, with the whole Soviet Union having the atomic bomb. Just pretty much a whole different world, which, me being a history teacher, I really dig this a lot. I also really like how Bond has to go through some degree of Americanization at the hands of the FBI and the CIA. You know, they give him kind of swanky little accessories for his person, such as the tie clip that looks like a whip, and he gets a crew cut haircut, and just, you know, trying to look more American, which really doesn't fool the enemy at all. As they already know, they're looking for an Englishman. You know, they're calling Bond Limey, and plus Bond's got a scar, so they're looking for a Limey with a scar. So no amount of Americanization and crew cut haircuts and whip-shaped tie clips are going to hide that from them. But I just thought it was a cool little aspect of the story. I also really dig the whole atmosphere of the novel. I mean, this novel, being the second novel of the series, is quite different from the rest of the series. It has a lot to do with, you know, voodoo and black magic. The whole atmosphere is kind of darker than what it would regularly be. I mean, Fleming didn't really, you know, go all magical and dark in most of his novels, but this one kind of is, and it's kind of interesting to see how Bond, you know, reacts to that sort of counterculture. And as we've seen, he kind of freaks out when he's reading the book, which kind of shows how his mindset is. I mean, it was the 1950s. I guess people didn't know about zombies and black magic and everything like we do today. So I guess it is kind of a different world than what Bond is used to. Like I've said, the big thing that I think the novel fails in is the whole Smersh connection. I think that if Fleming had kind of put more work into that element, I think the novel would be more well-renowned than what it is. I actually love this novel, but from what I've read and from what I've watched from other Bond YouTubers, I don't think this novel is really held in that high regard. But I think that if Fleming had actually put more work into the whole Smersh element, I think that this novel would be one of the better known. I'm probably one of the only people you will ever hear say that Live and Let Die, the novel, is better than Casino Royale, the novel. And I'm not saying that Casino Royale is a bad novel. I love that novel. But, I mean, I just think Live and Let Die is a fun read. I mean, you know, you've got Bond and Felix, you know, they're chummy, they're, you know, going together on an adventure, you know. You're seeing a lot of elements that will later on be used in the Bond movies, such as the whole keel hauling scene, which of course we see in the movie For Your Eyes Only, and of course the whole Felix getting his leg and arm ate off by a shark. We of course see that in Timothy Dalton's second and final James Bond adventure, License to Kill. Another part of License to Kill that we see some Live and Let Die influence is whenever Timothy Dalton's James Bond finds the cocaine in the little vat full of worms. So that's kind of like a reference to where James Bond in the novel finds the gold doubloons in the aquariums that have the deadly fish in it. So, it's kind of like in the 80s, all that cocaine, that was kind of like an equivalent to having gold. So that's how they played. Live and Let Die, of course, we know it's been adapted into the Eon-produced Live and Let Die movie from 1973, which was actually the first Bond movie I ever owned. And honestly, I think it was probably the first Bond movie I ever watched. So that's I hold that movie in high regard. I love that movie. Roger Moore isn't my favorite James Bond, but I love that movie. It's at least on my top 10. My father and I used to watch it all the time. And of course, we have the lesser-known video game, Live and Let Die, which was originally another game, which was just based on using a boat. And I guess the developers of the game thought that, driving the boat reminded them so much of the James Bond movie, they wanted to make a James Bond game. So they made the Live and Let Die Bond game. And all of the pictures that you've seen throughout this video, well, not all of them, but majority of them came from the Dynamite Comics Live and Let Die graphic novel, which is superb. And if you don't have it, you need to get it right now. Go and buy it right now. And of course, we have the radio drama Live and Let Die, which features Toby Stephens, who of course we know played Gustav Graves in Die Another Day. Toby Stephens plays James Bond in this radio drama, and if you haven't listened to that, you need to go to YouTube right now and listen to it. So, all in all, as you can see, I'm a pretty big fan of Live and Let Die, the novel. I love it. Do I like it as much as the Live and Let Die movie? I don't really know, because I really like that movie too. Probably like the movie a little bit better. I don't know. We'll see one of these days. But that's it for right now. Really appreciate you watching this, and I will see you next time. Adios.